We're back with Metal Gear Solid 2, seeing as the first two podcasts went tremendously well.
Fantastic.
The feedback's been positive, so we decided we'll stay going. And right on cue, here's the dog.
Nola. I knew keeping the door ajar now, because he'd be flying up.
Yeah, only one dog this evening. But anyways, dear listener, I am once again joined by my buddy Ben.
Hello, PJ. It's good to be back.
Well, hey.
And hello, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast.
The old podcast.
Doggycast, because he's licking the hands off me now.
Yeah, so we said we're going to tip into the Pandora's box that is Metal Gear Solid 2.
A game that certainly spun my head anyway, I tell you that much.
Yeah, once again we have the perspective of Ben, who comes at this from the position of only having played it. How many years ago was that now?
2 years ago, I think. 3.
Was it 2 or 3 years ago? Yeah.
Something like that, yeah.
2 is so much more complex than the first one. And as far as some people are concerned, that's their issue with it. Other people then would tell you that that's why it's fantastic. The first game was a stealth action game, as espionage elements, all that kind of jazz. And we want more of the same from the sequel. But, you know, Kojima being the man that he is, he kind of wanted to examine what the nature of a sequel is, what does it mean to be a sequel, and to get into pretentious territory. So,
With Kojima, say it ain't so.
Say it ain't so. But that's not me criticising this game, because as I mentioned in the last two podcasts, I love Metal Gear Solid 1 through 3. So 1, 2 and 3 are flawless games. Well, flawless for the most part, as far as I'm concerned, and I rate them very highly. But unfortunately, as the series went on, they started to become a parody of themselves. There's a strong argument to be made that the rot began in this game. We're going to get into all of that. From 1998, obviously with the tremendous success of the first Metal Gear Solid game, there was inevitably going to be a sequel. And I've often heard it being said, and I've read it so many different places, where apparently Kojima wanted to, like, he wrote every game as the last game. So he was under the belief that he was going to knock Metal Gear Solid out and then move on to something else. But because with any successful IP, you know, the producers behind it, the money men, are going to say, no, that made money, so do another one of those. As the series goes on, you'll hear more. The discourse surrounding Kojima was that he wanted to move on from the series and he kept getting dragged back into it. People use this as a defense for the subpar writing of 4. Again, not to get into 4 and 5. But on that topic, for the first 3 Metal Gear games, he had a co-writer by the name of, and forgive me, I'm going to butcher this because I'm from Tipperary and I'm trying to pronounce Japanese names.
Give it a blast, go on.
Tomokazu Fukushima?
Tomokazu Fukushima.
Yeah, good man.
Yeah.
So you can do that better than what I can.
I'm half Japanese, did I not tell you that?
Half Japanese, half Cork. What a
dirty hybrid, there you go.
What a mix. For the first 3 games, you still had the involvement of Tomokazu Fukushima, who is credited, I'd say, as a kind of a bit of a joke. What was it you were looking on? You only showed it to me earlier on. Was it Wikipedia?
Something like that, yeah. Small little snippets here and there, videos and the Wikipedia, would you say, little gaming outlets and stuff like that? Yeah.
But under the bio of Tomokazu Fukushima, he is credited with restraining Kojima.
Oh, that was my one now. I took a few notes, and he was behind a lot of the codec calls, a lot of the optional ones, which are very plentiful.
Yeah.
And in massive writing here in the bullet point, I said, restrain Kojima.
Yeah,
which is quite an understatement.
Because a megalomaniac like Kojima needs restraining.
He needs a good old lick of the whip every once in a while.
Yeah.
And old Tomokazu Fukushima delivered said lick.
And as soon as there was a parting of ways there, don't know why, I don't know if there was any drama or anything like that, I've got no clue. But for whatever reason, when he bowed out, the writing took a considerable decline in quality.
I think the word you're looking for, the expression, is a nosedive?
A nosedive, yeah. So, Metal Gear Solid 2, coming hot off the heels of the success of the original Metal Gear Solid game in 1998, we were inevitably getting a sequel. And I remember, like I said in the earlier podcasts, I was invested in this franchise from the age of 10 when they released the first Metal Gear Solid game. So naturally enough, I was absolutely chewing my hands with anticipation for the sequel. It was in that time from 1998 until the release of Metal Gear Solid 2 in November of
2001.
2001. Yeah. But here's a little caveat now. It was released in November. Actually, funnily enough, it was released 22 years ago today in America.
Oh, Christ, yeah.
So there you go. There's a little serendipity. I forgot we're in November. Yeah, a little serendipity there now for our listeners. However, us being based in Ireland, the European release of the game wasn't released until March the 8th. And I remember it because I took a half day from school when the game came out. Like, I lied about being sick and it was planned. It was all calculated. I had everything calculated down to a fine art. I knew my mother was going to do the shopping that day. I already had the game bought and paid for from Extravision in Thurles at the time. Extravision, for our non-Irish viewers, was like Blockbuster, but it was the Irish equivalent, and that was around up until 2012 or something. 2013, but the arse fell out of it, as it did with any DVD or game rental company, and they're just relics of a bygone era now. But I remember going to get that game. I timed faking my sickness in school so as they had to call my mother before she went to the shops, so she'd have to pick me up from school, letting on to be sick, of course. And I was like, oh God, I'm fear sick. And then my mother was like, oh, I'm going into the shop to do the shopping or whatever. And then I tore into the Extravision to pick up the game that I had bought and said nothing to the mother about it. Went home, jumped into the bed, letting on to be shook, and just turned the game on and flogged away. Yeah, so...
You are a dirty, crafty bastard.
Oh, sure, look. I'll tell you...
You're a poor old mother, huh? Coming to collect your arse.
Poor old mother me fuck. I mean, poor old me having to go into that absolute hole of a school.
Out in the middle of Thurles, is it? That pit.
No, sorry, no, I didn't go to school in Thurles. I was school in Cashel.
Is that still in Tipp?
It is in Tipp, yeah.
Pit.
Yeah.
Muck. That's what it is.
Where hopes and dreams go to die.
There's a shoulder where death comes to cry.
So I was in my first year of secondary school, and let me tell you, that was one of the most depressing years of my life.
It usually is for most people, right? Yeah.
Yeah, just when you're plucked out of like a little primary school where everything is all colouring books and crayons and just everything handy, and next thing you're horsed into school with a load of fuckers that you don't know. You're just a simple country boy, and you know, you like what you like, and you know, you're everyone is at that age where puberty is just starting to kick in. So life is just starting to get complicated, and they're throwing all these new subjects at. Oh, it's just a special type of hell.
They're deep in, but that's where they chucked you.
Yeah. So look, poor me mother, poor fucking me.
You needed the break, I think.
Yeah. This was my light in the darkness, was this game, and I had hotly anticipated this game ever since the release of the first one. And I was obsessively buying the magazines and stuff that came with, or like they came with these DVDs at the time, because we were just on the PlayStation 2. The PlayStation 2 was brand new hardware. And I remember I managed to get one. Okay, anyone outside of Ireland, they mightn't have a frame of reference for this, but if, like me, you were born around, you know, the late 80s, 90s in Ireland, in all likelihood, you were born into the Catholic faith. As a result, you go through a couple of things that are actually quite lucrative affairs. First, at around the age of, is it 7 or 8 or something like that, or maybe 9?
You're right.
I can't quite remember. But that's the first Holy Communion, yeah. So you will get cards from neighbours and relatives and such with maybe like a tenner in them or a fiver in them, or if someone was, you know, really splashing out and wanting to make an impression, they might give you 20. You start out with your communion, but this coincided with another event called your confirmation, where you swear off of all the things that you're not going to do, that you're going to sacrifice because of your love for the Lord. And
you're
nobody
going to be a good little Catholic boy from this point on.
Yeah, and nobody follows through on it.
Of course not.
So, you know, I swear I won't drink, or I swear I won't smoke, or any of this kind of jazz. But in any case, it was my confirmation, and I got a ball of money for it. Just about enough to buy a PlayStation 2. At the time when the PlayStation 2 came out, you only had a handful of releases that were out in the bloody thing.
How much did it cost to release?
It was very expensive.
I can imagine, yeah.
So I had to combine what I got from my confirmation with money I'd been putting aside for ages.
You took God's money.
I most certainly
did. And you
did.
put it towards this device.
And I'll take it again. I wish
I'm sure they've got enough money to spare.
I wish you could have a confirmation every year and get like the price of a fucking.
It is very kind of strange looking at it retrospectively. You're getting money for being indoctrinated into the religious faith.
Well, look, it's only fair that you get some kind of compensation for being drip-fed bullshit all of your life. So,
it's yeah.
So,
God almighty.
Yeah, look, I thought that a PlayStation 2 was adequate enough compensation for the pain and suffering that had been projected onto me by people who seemingly knew better. It was the early 2000s. We had just come out of the 90s. I don't think anybody knew better about anything, and it's debatable whether we even do now. But look, that's neither here nor there. Metal Gear Solid 2, the release of that, I remember, because I now had the PlayStation 2 console, and there was only a handful of release titles on it that I didn't particularly care for. I remember I got Ridge Racer 5, which was a poor man's version of Ridge Racer Type 4, which came before it on the PS1. It was fine, nothing to write home about. There was Tekken Tag Tournament, which was, again, it was alright, nothing to write home about. But I didn't care because I knew Metal Gear Solid 2 was on the way, and that was all I really was bothered about. I remember there is another franchise that Kojima was involved in, and it was something that I was drawn to straight away because it was actually packaged with a playable demo, no less, of Metal Gear Solid 2. It was an obscure enough game by the name of Zone of the Enders. So that game came with a playable demo disc, and it was so bloody old. I don't know, does anyone remember this now? This is just little nonsensey detail that sad fuckers like me remember, but maybe other people probably don't. But the early PS2 games, they actually came on a blue disc.
Yeah.
The back of the disc was blue.
I still have loads in my home.
Yeah. Yeah. But not too long after that, they changed to resemble just like a normal DVD. So they were just a normal chrome, silver, whatever you want to call that, reflective surface. What I'm going to do for this video, because I threw a few video elements into the last one, I don't know whether they went down well or not, but I thought they did. So
I thought they did as well, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to do it again. And because, like I said before, I am a wicked sad man, I still have loads.
I would contest that, but I just can't. I can't find myself to lie.
Yeah, fair play. But I have a bunch of the old magazines that were promoting Metal Gear Solid 2 leading up to its release, and Metal Gear Solid 3 for that matter. So I kept all of those along with the DVDs that had the trailers and all that jazz on them. So I might open the next podcast with a little video with some of the magazines and the little bits and bobs leading up to the release. So if anyone wants a sconce at those things, they'll be in the next video.
Depends on the magazine, PJ. Oh, why are these pages sticking together?
I just really like Metal Gear.
I think I found an old magazine at home as well, talking about Metal Gear 3. And the page just before it goes, it was... The PlayStation 3 has just been delayed. I was like, oh no.
Oh dear.
Oh Lord above.
Like, it's just so of its time now. I mean, it's crazy even... I don't know, are gaming magazines even still a thing? Did they release those anymore?
Not that I know of, anyway.
Yeah, because it's just obsolete now, but like there was no real internet. The internet existed, but it was incredibly rudimentary. It didn't really resemble the internet that we have today. I don't think YouTube itself was invented until...
2006
or something like that, yeah. So that was invented around the time I was doing my Leaving Cert, when I was finishing school. So this is when I was starting secondary school. So it was magazines until the cows come home, basically, and I had a ton of them. I remember my criteria for what magazine I was going to buy and what magazine I wasn't going to buy. I was going to scan the cover, and if it mentioned anything got to do with Metal Gear Solid or Metal Gear Solid 2 and their upcoming release of that, I'd buy it. And I'd pray to bejesus that there'd be some kind of a clip or news that came on the DVD that came with it, because they used to package them with these DVDs. Over the years, I amassed a load of those, but when I became an adult, I got rid of all of them, bar the ones that were pertinent to Metal Gear, because everything else was kind of like, you know, a fleeting fancy. But here I am now in my fucking 30s, and I'm still going on about Metal Gear.
Like we said, sad old fucker.
Sad old Ben. But anyway.
Just to roll it back, you got the disc there for Zone of Enders, which contained the demo of Metal Gear Solid 2.
So I bought that game. I knew nothing about Zone of the Enders. I didn't particularly... I wasn't anticipating it. I didn't care for it, but it was like, I don't care. Take my money. I want to play Metal Gear Solid 2. Slight caveat, it turns out that I actually loved Zone of the Enders when I gave the game a chance after I had like melted the demo disc of Metal Gear Solid 2.
I know it makes reference to in the actual game. Boxes all the gaff.
Yeah, in the big shell portion of the game, in one of the warehouses, there are boxes with the Zoe, an acronym for Zone of the Enders. But you'll see the black box with the symbol and the font for Zone of the Enders, which was a nod and a wink to Kojima's other franchise, being Zone of the Enders. So I bought that game because of the demo included. That demo went, for anyone familiar with the game, which I would assume most people are, although the comments of the last one, I had like a couple of people saying to me that they'd actually never played Metal Gear, but they were listening to the podcast all the same and enjoying it. So I'm
fair play to you, lads.
For people who aren't familiar with the structure of Metal Gear Solid 2, there's two sections of the game. The first being set on a tanker, and the other is in a offshore oil cleanup facility thing called the Big Shell. Neither here nor there for the moment, but the demo contained all the way up until the first boss in the tanker section of the game. You could blaze through the demo in a very short amount of time if you took out the runtime for the cutscenes, which I never did because I'm, like I said, incredibly sad man. Every time I used to watch those cutscenes, so go around making, like, you could only call Otacon. He was the only guy that you have as a contact at that point in the game. You didn't have the support cast. Oh Christ, is it, I think 2 years? Yes, it is.
2 years, yeah.
2 years after the events of the first game. The first game finished off, okay, Liquid's dead. Ocelot got away with the optical disc containing the technical specs for the first Metal Gear, the giant mech that you fought at the end of the first game. The lore goes that Ocelot sold the specs to the black market, and now there was all these derivative models of Metal Gear showing up here, there and everywhere all around the globe. So Snake and Otacon formed their own little non-profit organisation, an NGO, a non-government organisation, I believe it is called Philanthropy, and their whole jazz is, we're going to go around the world destroying all of these derivative Metal Gear model things because they're of the philosophical belief that this technology shouldn't be out in the wild because it's dangerous. Nuclear equipped walking battle tanks, no good.
Sure, what's wrong with that?
Sure, look. What about it? I mean, whatever you're into.
Look, it's grand. If an old, old robot with nukes on it's your kind of thing, who are we to judge?
I was always more of a Corolla man myself, but
well,
you know. If
sure, that's a death machine in itself, but there you go.
Absolutely. I'll tell you, a Metal Gear couldn't take out one of them.
Metal Gear Pat, the Corolla.
Metal Gear Rolla. Yeah, so this one picks up, and now you are on the trail of a substantial new Metal Gear derivative that is being developed by the US Marine Corps, no less. So there was intel leaked to Otacon. Himself and Snake have decided, we have to get to the root of this. The Marines are developing a Metal Gear now. We have to go in there and we have to get photographic evidence of this Metal Gear prototype and leak it to the world, so as the world knows that the Marines and everyone are involved in making this lethal weapon, and we need to spread awareness and all the rest.
Have a look what they're doing.
Unlike the first game, you're not sent in with the mandate to destroy the Metal Gear. I think they're just trying to blow the lid off of it and let the world know that this is the new thing that the military-industrial complex are up to now. They're mass-producing these Metal Gears. To what end? This particular Metal Gear is being stored in the bow of a ship, a big tanker type job. So,
as is the name of the chapter.
Yes.
There you go.
You are on is it the Hudson River?
What's the name of the George Washington
Bridge? The George Washington Bridge. That's where the game opens.
It is a class cinematic, by the way.
Oh, mother of God.
My God.
This is where you see Kojima at his best with his cinematic flair and his love for cinema, because this is undeniably one of the most atmospheric, cool things ever.
They couldn't have done it without Harry Gregson Williams.
Harry Gregson Williams,
who did the score and the music for this, and it is fantastic. Yeah,
the score for the last game was absolutely unbelievable, and it was developed in-house by, I think, an artist who is listed under the name Tappy. But I'm not sure, is he a single artist or is that like a group of them and that's just their little collective? But they made the music in-house for Konami games.
Tappy.
Yeah, that's spellbinding, but because of the success of the first game, obviously they gave Kojima a lot of leeway, and he wanted to get a guy who was involved in like Hollywood movies and made the score for Hollywood movies. And I believe that it was a movie called The Replacement Killers that
That's the one, yeah.
Kojima watched. To my shame, I don't think I've seen that, or maybe I have and since forgotten it, because like I've mentioned numerous times now, my memory has gone to shite.
Do you know what day it is?
Bleh.
Good enough.
Yeah.
You're still cognitive to some sense anyway.
It's all the same. Like,
do you know where you are, PJ?
When you get past the ripe old age of 30, I think it's all just the one. It's whatever day it is until there's no days left.
Oh, lovely. That's what I got to look forward to anyway.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, the less said about that, the better. You'll know when it happens. But in any case, we pick up there at the old tanker.
He's walking up, cross the bridge first.
Sorry, I jumped the gun there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Harry Gregson Williams got involved for the music, and he did an absolutely unbelievable job, and he reprised his role for 3 and 4 as far as I'm aware. I'm not sure about 5. I think he did. I'm not so sure because my recollection of 4 and 5 is that bit more scant. Because
we'll figure that out when we cover those games.
Yeah.
But like his music score is fantastic, and it really kind of captures the whole tactical espionage that the name is kind of known for. Like when I listen to it sometimes, it's very reminiscent of some of the missions in GoldenEye.
The N64 game?
Yeah.
Or the score for the movie?
No, the 64 game.
Yeah, it's got that. It does have that kind of an espionage-y sound, whatever the hell that is, but it's something that I associate with a certain sequence of sounds, I suppose. And look, I'm not an audiophile or anything like that, so I'd be talking out my arse if I tried to describe the music to you in any other way other than to say it's class. But yeah, it certainly lends an ambience and a tone to the game that, like, say, from the very opening, that scene on the George Washington Bridge, like, Christ almighty, what an epic opening. Like, you've got that misty kind of a dirty old night, and you've Snake walking down the bridge with this poncho on him. Like, you know, it's not revealed that it's Snake, but sure, of course it's Snake. Who else is it? And he's smoking a fag in the rain. And I must preface this there now. This was something that a friend of mine ran into. For our non-Irish viewers, I might just qualify this statement. In Ireland, a nickname for a cigarette is a fag. You'll often hear, I'm going out to smoke a fag. But I remember a friend of mine was in Las Vegas. She went there on a kind of a drinking weekend and said, like, at one point she couldn't understand why people were giving her funny looks, because anytime she wanted to go outside for a cigarette, she'd say, I'm just going to go outside and smoke a fag, which to the American lingo meant, I'm going to go outside and shoot a gay. So that's not what we mean anyway. But
no, we just want to clarify, we're not going to be mowing down the homosexuals on this podcast, okay?
Yeah, that's it. That's
just clarifying that point.
Yeah, we'll just you know,
want to clear that up,
just so we're all on the one page. But yeah, Snake's going down smoking his cigarette in the rain, and yeah. And you've got this class score from Harry Gregson Williams really setting the tone, this dirty, misty night. And he's just there anyways. This man, he's cool as a breeze just walking down. You've got these very kind of rudimentary cars moving in the background. They're very poorly rendered, but they're moving fast, so it doesn't matter. All you need to know is, yeah, look, it's a busy night. George Washington Bridge, cars flying up and down the road.
You got the credits rolling as well.
Yeah, the credits rolling, very cinematic fashion. Like, again, this is where I'm a critic of Hideo Kojima, because I think he made a balls of the franchise. The further you get into it, like, the rot just gets to the point that, like, the ship is sunk.
Like I said, he's always had a kind of a head for the Hollywood kind of scene.
Yeah, but this is at a time where maybe down to the involvement of Tomokazu Fukushima, he was still on a leash. So this is the best of Kojima, basically. Yeah. So his cinematic flair really comes through during this sequence, and it's just one of the best openings to a game. Debatably, the opening of 3 is as good or better depending on who you ask. I personally prefer this one, but in any case, Snake eventually switches to his stealth camo, because he now has stealth camo that he presumably got from Otacon.
He breaks out into an old sprint. Poncho flies off him.
Yeah, Poncho just fucks off into the wind and the rain and off into the night. Snake is just pelting it down the bridge, and then he leaps over the edge of the bridge, and that's when you get that kind of orchestral bit of the music, and you've got like this choir giving it loads, and it's just like, ooh, class, what's going on? And then you get kind of the slow-mo and I don't know how you describe it, but he's dangling about there on the old rope, and he drops down to the tanker below, hits the ground, and that's when we get one of many Kojima film references. Say when he hits the ground, the stealth camo gives up the ghost. During this malfunction of the stealth camo, what happens is the visuals resemble the start of Terminator 2, where both Arnie and the T-1000 come backwards through time, and what happens is this little sphere of light with all these little bits of lightning shooting off it. They appear, and what happens at the start of this, when Snake hits the deck, the stealth camo packs in, it's made to resemble that scene, so it's a nod and a wink to Terminator, because Kojima is a cinemaphile, amongst other things. But yeah, so there's our first little nod and a wink. Oh,
second one then is the name of the ship.
The name of the ship, the Discovery, which is the same name that is given to the spaceship from 2001: A Space Odyssey. And that's not the only reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey, as from the first Metal Gear game and this Metal Gear game, Snake and Otacon's real names are Dave and Hal, respectively. So another nod and a wink to famous movie. But anyway, moving on. Yolanda.
Then it kind of pans back, revealing the title of the game.
Yeah, that's right. At that point,
slapping down on the tanker.
The rain absolutely hopping off of the main man himself.
Yeah.
And he just kind of looking up there, really calm and cool, and it's just like...
The title appears, Metal Gear Solid 2.
The scene is set, the tone is set. It's just absolutely tremendous. Snake gets on the blower to Otacon, and you get a little bit of exposition explaining the state of play now in the 2 years that have passed since the ending of the first game. They basically go into what I mentioned before about, the whole, we're sniffing out a trail here of the new Metal Gear. We just want to take some pictures of it, get it out there to the world, see what the world makes of the US Marines making their own Metal Gear. Not long after then, what happens is the ship is then boarded by a bunch of Russian soldiers.
Them boys.
Wouldn't you know it, they're at it again. Them bloody Ruskies. It's always the Ruskies.
The bastard and Reds have arrived.
Yep. So they clearly have their own designs on the Metal Gear. So this ship is full of undercover Marines, basically. All the men manning the decks were undercover Marines, but they get promptly shanked by the Ruskies in the night. So you are now in this precarious position where you boarded this ship with the intention of just avoiding these US Marines, getting to the holds of the ship and taking a few pictures of this Metal Gear. But now you also have to contend with this invading force of Russian mercenaries, because they clearly have designs in the new Metal Gear, because why else would they...
We forgot, there's, as Snake arrives, there's a helicopter hovering above with Ocelot.
Ocelot, yeah.
Fuck, forgot about that.
So very quickly we are greeted, well, we're not greeted, but we the viewer, Snake is unaware of this, but we see Ocelot.
Reintroduced to the old boy himself.
The sneaky bastard, the only surviving boss character from the original Metal Gear game. He's a slippery old serpent, is Ocelot.
You're fairly grand, hey.
You're fairly grand. Yeah, so I think the lines of dialogue that he spouts there are,
boy, he's right on schedule.
Alluding to the fact that he is aware that Snake was going to show up here. Maybe Ocelot was the one who leaked the information to Otacon to get him out there in the first place. We don't know at this point. So the crafty bastard Ocelot is still alive, and he's still a threat in the shadows, as it were.
Still class as well.
Take control then, and like this game, just to touch on the gameplay a little bit, like there's a lot of new features, and I remember they were mind-blowing when I first played the demo. Like the first person view mode, once you put your back to the wall, you could peek out around there's lots of new little obscure bits that a lot of people won't bother with, but like I said, being the sad man that I am, there wasn't a stone that
this
went
is a self-deprecation podcast.
Yeah.
I should show something about myself now, but I'm too great.
Don't do that. Yeah, you could do stuff like you had a grip meter. You could go to a railing and you could jump over the railing and hang off the opposite edge. But you'd have a little bar underneath your health that was basically your grip, how long you could keep on holding for. And when that depleted, you'd fall. But you could also do little pull-ups. And if you did 100 pull-ups, your grip level would go from grip level 1 to grip level 2. And there was very little point in doing it. Almost no point at all, unless you were hunting for dog tags. And dog tags were something that the soldiers now carried, because one of the new mechanics was you could sneak up behind the soldiers when they weren't looking and hold them up with the gun. What you could do is, if you pointed the gun at their head, they would give you their dog tags. They would start shaking in this kind of a funny way, where they would just drop ammo or whatever it was they had on them.
Sometimes they wouldn't die. You have to give a bit of a, shall we say, encouragement.
Yeah, sometimes they would put up a bit of a fight and they'd be like, yeah, you're not going to shoot me. And then you could either shoot by their head or you could shoot them in the hand or some place non-lethal, and they'd give up the dog tag or the ammo or whatever it was they had.
What are you going to do? Shoot me?
Just like all these new things that were in the game, like they really built on the foundation of the first one and added.
See, another little detail as well is that you can shoot the radio, the hip.
You can shoot the radio on the hip, yeah. In this game, once the enemy spotted you, it wasn't straight into alert mode. They had to take the little walkie-talkie from the back of their belt, put it to their face, say, I found the enemy, and then that would trigger the alert thing. But if you shot that radio, so you could do this unknownst to the enemy, like they could be just walking around and you could go into first person view, shoot the radio, and now if they spotted you, they turn around and try and use the radio, they can't call for backup. So now they just have to try and deal with you themselves. They were easily enough dispatched, although they're that bit trickier. Like the AI and the enemies, they were that bit smarter in this one. Their field of view was better. In the first game, if you didn't fall into the cone of vision that the enemy had on the radar, they wouldn't see you. But now if you were a bit outside it, they'd spot you and they'd go, oh, what's that? And they'd walk over to investigate. And if they got within a certain view of you, that would trigger the alert. So everything down to like enemy AI, new gameplay features. The game was just so much more complex now. The attention to detail, even with regards to...
Oh, it's ridiculous in this one.
Yeah, with regards to the environment, there's a little bit where you're in like a little bar inside the boat. There's like loads of little glasses and bottles on the shelf of the bar, and you can shoot them all individually. Every single one of these was destructible. Like
that was grand enough, but the one actually was class was the fucking ice.
Yeah, the ice. And the ice would, if you knocked over the bucket with the ice in it, you could look at the ice if you were sad enough to and watch it melt in real time.
Now, who would be sad enough to do that?
Yeah, I watched the ice melt. Shock horror. Another funny thing about it was, like I said, these games, the first three at least, I will go to my grave defending them as serious pieces of media that deserve to be taken seriously and aren't zany and silly as people.
But like I said, it's all relative where you kind of draw that line yourself, I suppose.
Yeah, but where you have your little bits of levity in this one is like environmental things. Like, say, the lockers. Oh, this is another thing, yeah. You could knock out enemies now because now you had a method of taking out your enemies non-lethally. You were sent in and the only weapon you're given is a tranquilizer gun, because Kojima's whole thing was like, these are actually anti-violence games, and the ranking that you'll be given at the end of the game is decided on, you know, how little enemies you kill. So killing enemies is often the easiest way out. You just mow the fuckers down and they're not an issue anymore. But with regards to this game, you could knock them out with tranquilizers, you could deprive them of air, you could just beat the crap out of them. Once you incapacitated an enemy, the enemy would just be there on the floor. They wouldn't just disappear like in the last game. So that was an issue, because if another enemy soldier came along and they found this body, be it a dead body or an unconscious body, that was going to trigger some kind of a response. If it was a dead body, they'd send a replacement soldier and they'd go into caution mode and they'd be kind of semi-searching for you.
Yeah.
So what you could do is you could open the lockers and you could throw them into the lockers now, which was like, there was just so many new little features to the gameplay in this, it's mind-boggling. But getting back to the lockers, this is what I'm talking about with the environmental humour. You can now open the lockers, and at some of the lockers there'd be posters of scantily clad women, because Kojima is, if nothing else, a bit of a horn dog. And
he's a massive fucking pervert.
Oh, absolutely.
God almighty.
But
wait till I get to 4. Jesus.
I wonder how bad is he relative to men from Japanese culture, and you know, not
tippy-toe around this one.
Yeah, I've heard the stories with regards to stuff you can buy in Japan in vending machines. Like,
I think I told you that they sell panties
Yeah.
vending machines.
I've never been to Japan. I'd love to go to Japan. And
After hearing that, yeah.
Oh, yeah. After hearing that, yeah. I'll go over for some vending machine knickers.
Right. I don't know if it's true or not, but apparently it gets a bit worse than that, where you can pick panties based on how long they've been worn.
Oh, sweet Jesus.
And what kind of, shall we say, excrement you'll find in it. I don't know if that's true or not. That's what I heard somewhere in like another podcast.
You have a country that kind of practice is permissible in. This is coming from, I referenced it earlier on, coming from me being a good God-fearing Catholic boy, or at least that's the way I was brought up anyway. In relativity to that, he's probably not that bad. I'm sure there's a lot worse. In fact, I've no doubt there's a lot worse. But in any case, he takes every opportunity he can to plaster scantily clad women around the place. Just to make a slight reference to 5, I mean, he has a character whose whole thing is like, she's a model and she's wearing hardly nothing. She spends the entire game going around the place in bra and knickers, and it's a case of like, why is she doing that? And he's like, oh, there's an explanation, and when you find out what the explanation is, you'll be ashamed of your thoughts and deeds. And sure enough, when it came time to explain it, the explanation was just nonsense, just utterly ridiculous. Kojima, why didn't you? I'd have much more respect for you if you just said, look, I thought your one was absolutely savage and I wanted any excuse to get her semi-naked in this thing. So it's like, right, fair enough, that I could understand, but don't piss down my back and tell me it's raining. Like, that's all you wanted, you dirty fucker. So,
you dirty little
So there's these posters inside the lockers now. What you can do is, if you open one of the doors and you do the thing that I mentioned earlier on where you like lean up against them and you do the tap thing, if you tap around the groin area on the posters, because all the posters, they're, well, at least the 2 in this particular room I'm thinking of, they're positioned in such a way that if you put your back to them, and the mechanic that's a carryover from the 1998 game where you knock on a wall or you knock on whatever surface, whatever way his hand falls, it falls exactly on the groin of said women. If there's any active soldiers around, it'll trigger an alert. There's a bit of levity baked into the environment, and that's tongue-in-cheek and that's funny, and I've got no issue with that, but the comic relief as it went on bled into the main game and actually undermined the tone of them.
To call it humour is a bit of an insult.
I would call it tumour, because I believe it was the rot that killed the franchise. Just this insistence on, oh Christ, like the entire bit towards the end of Metal Gear 4. Oh fuck. Look, like, we gotta stay off it, but we'll get to Metal Gear 4. I'm
so tempted to just go on a tirade against it right now, but we can't.
Yeah.
Just leave it off for now.
Yeah.
Save it all up.
It's so difficult to try and examine any of these things in a vacuum when you know what way the series went.
It's staring down at us.
For the game that we're talking about right now, everything was fine. Everything was within acceptable parameters. The humour was actually humorous. It knew its place. It didn't affect the story. It didn't undermine the characters. It was just, haha, whatever. But with regards to those things as well, you could climb into the locker, go into first person view, stare at the poster of the scantily clad model, call Otacon, and Snake's face would be, his expression would be changed to that. Again, I'm going to put this into the video as well, so there will be video elements to this.
What do you think you're doing, Snake? You don't have enough to keep you busy? Try to remember the mission if you can.
A man who looks as well. Far too pleased.
Yeah, and let's just say he looks like he's under a bit of pressure. Yeah, you've all these, in my opinion, great things, like the evolution of the gameplay, the graphics, the soundtrack. It does what a good
sequel should do, build upon its predecessor and refine its core gameplay elements. Build upon it.
So for the most part, and this is where the whole thing starts to get a bit complex, Kojima was kind of gaslighting the consumer, where he gave you, in the tanker part of the game, he gave you everything that you think a sequel should be. And rightly so. I mean, if you watch something like a James Bond movie, then you go to watch its sequel. I think it's a fair enough expectation that the second movie is going to be similar to the first in some sense, where Kojima, being the mind that he is, he wanted to examine what it is to be a sequel and, you know, what the implications of fan expectation is and all that kind of thing. Depending on who you ask, they will give you a different answer. I like the outcome because, like I said, I think this is from an era where Kojima was still on a leash and he was still producing good stuff.
I mean, like, there's no denying there's a bit of there's brilliance behind what he does. But like we said, your mano,
Tomokazu Fukushima.
Yeah. Like, he was there to kind of, keep him under wraps in a way. Keep him controlled.
Any brilliant mind, any brilliant creative mind, at least. I mean, I'm not so sure does this apply to maybe brilliant scientists or brilliant engineers or whatever. Maybe it does. I don't know. Coming from someone who at least tries his hand at creative endeavours to varying degrees of success and varying from a small bit to fuck all, I would say that any good creative mind needs to be brought down to earth by someone else, because sometimes you can, like in any collaboration, you can fall in love with your own ideas to their own detriment. And there is, in editing, you'll often hear of the term kill your darlings. You might have all these ideas that you want to get into something, but the fact of the matter may be that there's just too much going on, and maybe you're confusing stuff or you're affecting the pace, depending what it is, be it a game, be it a film, be it a book, whatever. But there might be some ideas that you're very attached to that you just have to leave on the cutting room floor for any number of reasons. You can't include them. It would seem at this point in Kojima's career, now this game was very, very far ahead of its time, incredibly complex. Insane. Incredibly intelligent game, and the fact that it got made at all is a miracle. Depending on who you ask, they'll tell you that this game is contrived, that it is pretentious.
Give me names.
No. Yeah, that it's up its own arse. And those are things that, despite the fact I adore the game, I would have to concede that you're not wrong. Like, those things are definitely... I can understand how you would come away from it and you would come away with that conclusion, but I think to come away with that conclusion is to throw the baby out with the bathwater. The first game was the perfect action game and had the perfect characters, had the perfect bosses, everything firing on all cylinders. It was the perfect stealth action game.
Really good, Rachel.
It would have been kind of a little bit redundant in some way to just give you more of the same. Now, that's what everybody wanted. That's what Kojima fooled everyone into thinking that they were getting with this game. It was kind of a case of the tanker was almost designed to fool you into believing that this is the same game with better graphics, with talent from Hollywood with regards to the score by Harry Gregson Williams. They took all of the elements from the first game, they built upon them, they made everything better. So on paper, the tanker sequence looks like the perfect sequel. The way that the game goes is you have to deal with all of these Russian guys now, this Russian military that on the ship, and when you get down to the holes to where Metal Gear is being stored, you encounter the Marine commander Scott Dolph, who is giving a big speech about how this new Metal Gear is going to be an anti-Metal Gear, and its main purpose is to destroy all the Metal Gear derivatives that have popped up all around the world ever since the test data for the Metal Gear from the first game was leaked on the black market by Ocelot, no less. It's at this point when the game starts to subvert expectations, I suppose. Now, that's a dirty term nowadays because you have a lot of hack writers that basically use this as a shorthand for what they think is good writing or good storytelling, where basically we lead you down a garden path expecting something and then we give you something else entirely.
All contextual, like it can be done wrong, it can be done right, like anything else.
It's at that point in the game starts to unravel from what you believe is this perfect sequel. Snake gets there, he takes the photos as planned of the new Metal Gear. You upload them to a computer to Otacon, and as part of the levity, if you were going around taking pictures of stuff like, say, the posters of the women, Otacon will have a response to it once you send him those photos, and it's all funny.
So, any codec moments from you, Snake? Okay, first up. Oh, this is
What?
Nothing. It's nothing. But this isn't a photo of Metal Gear anyway. Sorry, but you're gonna have to go back and shoot another set. I'll just make a backup of this one. The next one's... More of these? Is that all you think about? Hey, what you like is your business. Just get those Metal Gear pictures. I'll just make a backup of this one.
that's where you get your levity in an otherwise very serious game. Just another little poke at Kojima, because I've done a bunch of them now in the last 2 podcasts.
This will definitely be the last one anyway.
Yeah.
Go on.
Lies. There is a bit in the tanker holes where the Marine commander, he's giving his speech telling all the Marines what the story with this new Metal Gear is, what its purpose is, how it's going to render all other Metal Gears obsolete, so on and so forth. In one of the holes, because I think there's 3 different holes.
There's 3 different sections you make your way through.
Yeah.
One of them has the projector screen.
One of the projector screens, anyways, if you take a photo with the camera that you have, the same camera that you're going to use to take the photos of the Metal Gear, if you take a photo of one of those projectors, what will happen is you will get a ghost image of Kojima's face that will come out through it, and it's like, ooh. And if you send that picture to Otacon, he'll get spooked out by it, because obviously it's a ghost.
Don't send me creepy stuff like this. What if I get possessed or something? Sorry, but this doesn't work. I hate to ask, but can you try again?
The man can't help himself. Anywhere at all he can crowbar his face into the thing, he will take that opportunity.
Well, see, what was the annoying part in the first part of the first game, when you fight Psycho Mantis, and he interrupts the fight with his little name in the corner. Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, you see, that one I could look on it a little bit more forgivingly, because what was supposed to happen there was the old CRT televisions back then, the text that said Hideo in the corner. Back then, those old TVs, they might have had a channel that was you probably had your console connected to, and it was to fool you into thinking that the console had turned off or something. Normally what it would have said in that green blocky writing was video, and that rhymes with Hideo, so I would have let him away with that.
I didn't get that though, because we did the emulator, so I just saw his name pop up.
Yeah, see,
I didn't know that. That's kind of clever, I suppose, but...
Yeah, that's a consequence of coming to the series too late, my boy.
Well, there's nothing I can do about it now.
No.
Continue on.
That's it. The past is written, the ink is dry.
Kill it if you must.
Abso-fucking-lutely. But in any case, yeah, so that was just another poke and a prod at Kojima, because fuck yeah. You get there anyways, you take the pictures of the Metal Gear, you send them off to Otacon, all is good in the hood that way. Well, sorry, no, all is not good in the hood.
Seemingly,
yeah.
At first.
Ocelot shows up, and he holds up the entire affair. He starts to allude to some shadowy organisation that he has come to take Metal Gear back to. This is a very big thing that we'll have to elaborate on later on.
It is going to make my head spin, compartmentalise it, but yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I reckon this might go into 3 parts, because there's so much to be said about it. Like, we covered anticipating Metal Gear Solid 2 from Metal Gear Solid 1, doing a little bit now about the tanker, but we're just going to get past the tanker in this episode, I'd swear, where we're going to have to go with this, because this game is incredibly meta. So there's a lot of stuff going on, like I referenced in one of the other podcasts. There is a video by a YouTuber by the name of Max Durat, and his video is actually based on another guy's video whose name escapes me now, but there has been many video essays made on this game and a section of the game towards the end called the most profound moment in video games. If you look that up, you're going to find a bunch of videos, be they reactions or responses to it. Max Durat made his video in response to the original. I can't remember who did the original video, but it's all about how Kojima predicted the future with where the plot goes. So the game itself gets into subject matter surrounding like
digital age, really, kind of
fake news, disinformation, all this kind of thing. And the game itself and the marketing that the game had leading up to its release had you believe that Solid Snake was the primary character that you played as throughout this game, and that would be the expectation that anyone would have coming hot off the heels of the original game into the second game. Well, of course the main character is going to be the same. Everybody loved him. Why would you change him? But a big thing was how this game and the marketing deceived you into believing that, and it wasn't until the game was released in November 2001, November 13th, 22 years ago, today. Sweet Jesus, I'm old.
But you see, even leading up to that, I went back and rewatched some of those videos.
Yeah.
Like the thing leading up to it, went as far as swapping out Raiden's model.
That's right, yeah.
In the big shell.
There's trailers, and I'll link the trailers, although I don't know, is there any need, because you can just type in
Just look them up,
Metal
you
Gear
lazy Bastard.
Yeah, Metal Gear
For the love
Solid
of
2
God.
trailers. They did intentionally swap out character models and make you believe that Snake was still the playable character. But it was revealed in November 2001 that you didn't in fact play through the majority of the game as Solid Snake. The tanker sequence that we've been talking about, that is the only sequence in Metal Gear Solid 2 that you play as
Old Snake.
our Solid Snake. He went on then to be swapped out in the next section, which takes place 2 years after the events of the tanker sequence. And actually, I better close off the tanker.
Maybe a roll back small bit.
Yeah,
so
I've got to roll this back.
Ocelot shows up.
Ocelot shows up, says, I'm here to take back Metal Gear. I'm going to see Metal Gear return to the Patriots. So he's mentioning this organisation.
First he shows up with Gorlukovich.
Yeah, he shows up with Gorlukovich, who is the commander of all of the Russian guys. Ocelot is this notorious triple agent character, so he's playing Gorlukovich. I kind of glazed over this too, but you fought Gorlukovich's daughter, Olga, as a boss fight on the deck of the tanker. You incapacitated her with your tranquilizer gun. You moved on, and that's the last you see of her until this section, until the latter section of the game. What transpires is then Ocelot betrays Colonel Gorlukovich, shoots him, shoots
the Commander
Scott Dolph, riddles that guy and tells all of the soldiers on board, be they Russian soldiers or be they the Marines, said, look, this entire ship has been rigged with C4. If you swim for your lives, you might yet make it. So blows up the ship, sinks the ship. Ocelot jumps into Metal Gear, starts her up, and just before that happens, we get one of the things now. Like I've tried to defend Metal Gear.
I'm very divided on it. I don't know how. I'm not quite sure how to feel about it. But a plot point comes about where it's revealed that Ocelot's arm has been replaced with Liquid's arm. It's been grafted on.
Yeah, if I should have mentioned this when we mentioned Ocelot initially.
We're there now, yeah. It's only revealed at that point though, but it does show him with his arm back, so it's kind of like, where did this come from? How did this
If
happen?
everyone remembers, the character of Ocelot lost his hand in the last game because the cyborg ninja, Grey Fox, sliced it off with his samurai sword and rendered him a one-armed man, basically.
One-armed bandit.
Yeah. The one-armed gunslinger. From that point, you would assume that he's hardly grown another hand, but what has transpired in the meantime is
it gets grafted on.
the dead body of Liquid. They don't reveal this at this point in the game, but fuck it, we're going to do it now because it's just easier than tiptoeing around it for sake of it. So, the dead body of Liquid, Ocelot had the arm of Liquid removed and grafted that arm where his own one used to be. Why, God only knows, but he did that. And now this arm, in the presence of Solid Snake, takes over the mind of Ocelot and possesses him. So now Ocelot is being possessed by the ghost of Liquid Snake.
Okay, now that you've said that, I'm no longer divided. That's a bit... I don't know how to feel about that. It's good to have Cam Clark back to reprise his role as Liquid, so to speak.
Remember I said earlier on about how Kojima saw every game in the franchise that he made as being the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's commonly known that he bitterly regretted killing off Liquid Snake, and that was a massive own goal because the character was written brilliantly. The performance given by Cam Clark is just sensational.
I mean, it was nice to hear him again, but like after you told me that, there should have been at least, follow through with some conviction. You made the choice. You made your bed, Kojima.
Yeah,
sleep.
This is another, and look, we keep going forward, but it just has to be said. I have to get it out of the system. This is a plot point that on paper is ridiculous. It's completely stupid and completely silly, and it makes it
a way bit silly.
It makes it a very difficult case for me to make when I'm trying to defend Metal Gear from critics.
I know you loved. I know you love it.
Who say it's zany and it's mental. Like, this is one of the more zany and stupid aspects. Admittedly, a daft aspect of the game, but the game
Go ahead, try and defend it.
like, it's very difficult. It's very difficult.
I don't know. I don't know. You either enjoy it or you don't.
Yeah,
like if you're able to go get up with like Psycho Mantis, these powers, so forth. Like it gets a small bit more kind of silly with Vamp, with his kind of thing. But like this, I just don't know. where it kind of goes inevitably with 4, it's just a very piss poor conclusion.
Yeah, look, like we said in the last one as well, with anything that has supernatural, fantastical elements, it's all a case of where you draw the line in the sand. Is the idea of a man grafting another man's arm where his own used to be onto him and then becoming possessed by that arm, is that any more stupid than a man with psychic powers?
You tell us, dear listener. To the lad who's never played Metal Gear, just by that description alone, does that sound a bit too silly for you? Or could you run with that?
Yeah, look, it all depends. Wherever you want to draw the line in the sand and say, that's too much for me, and I couldn't tell anyone that they were being unreasonable for saying, you know what, that's fucking stupid. However, I think the game has so much thought-provoking, class writing, characters, ideas. This is the most complex meta game I think that's ever been made, and the most thought-provoking game that I've ever played, at least.
Sure, like you said now earlier, 22 years ago it came out, and it's probably more relative now.
Yeah.
Than when it initially came out.
So I have to look forgivingly on some elements where, admittedly, it drops the ball. But Kojima is a devil for trying to have his cake and eat it too, which would be fair enough if he had a little bit of conviction for his ideas. And this is why I keep on saying that as the series goes on, the quality of the writing just nosedives. Because ideas that he himself brought forth, he then decides retroactively, do you know what, that was actually a bad idea, and now I'm going to dedicate a lot of screen time in latter games trying to retcon those bad ideas that I brought into it back out of it. Like 4 in particular tries to backpedal on this whole thing with Liquid's arm, but again, we'll get to that when we get to it.
Yeah.
And it just wastes everybody's time. Whereas if you just said another thing that they all like, the games as they go on, they keep trying to retroactively explain away the supernatural elements.
This is something that happens later, especially with like Vamp.
Yeah,
it's just nanomachines.
Yeah, and that's the catch-all explanation.
Nanomachines, son.
Whereas all you have to do is, nobody's questioning this. Just say, look, yeah, there's a vampire. Yeah, there's a fucking guy with psychic powers. It doesn't warrant any explanation, no more than, yeah, there's an Iron Man, there's a Thor, there's a Harry Potter, there's a fucking Luke Skywalker. We have to just accept that the world features these things, and that's it. They don't warrant explanation. You make up your mind and stop trying to kind of sit in the fence with these. Now I'm talking to Kojima in this.
I'm talking to you, Kojima.
Yeah, either the game has supernatural elements or it doesn't. Stop trying to have your cake and eat it too, you pretentious arsehole.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah, so look, that whole thing with Liquid happens, but...
Liquid Ocelot.
Liquid Ocelot, yeah. So...
Dirty bastard, yeah.
It's been a while, brother.
Who are you?
You know who I am.
Liquid?
Not so young anymore, eh, Snake?
And like you said, it was great to hear Cam Clark's voice. The second you hear Ocelot's voice change from Patrick
Which, once again, not to jump the gun again, but then they get rid of it in 4.
They get rid of that in 4. Yeah, this is them. Just like I said, they try and backpedal on all this in 4 because he has since come to his senses and realised that was a stupid idea and I shouldn't have done it.
But the thing is, he follows it halfway through then. It's like, okay, we're still continuing it with... He thinks he's Liquid, but he doesn't have the voice. It's just like... Roll it back.
Yeah, we got to stop there now because we're just going to go into 4. We're going to stick to 2. So look,
Cam Clark's back. He sees Snake. It triggers this thing where he possesses
Liquid's arm wakes up and Liquid's consciousness takes over.
Yeah.
Takes over Ocelot. And it was absolutely fantastic to hear that iconic performance.
It's been a while, brother.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus, some of the dialogue. Oh, I said something
Snake, about his age, anyway.
Yeah,
You're looking older, Snake.
Not so young anymore, eh, Snake? You're drowning in time. I know what it's like, brother. No wonder Naomi passed you over for the Fox Dive program. Ouch! Get out of my mind, Liquid!
And what Liquid is alluding to is the fact that the clones were made with a shortened lifespan, and this is something that they get into more primarily in 4, but it's hinted at in this game, where the clones of Big Boss they're not going to be able to live a full lifespan. they have been designed to die early, to age quickly, and so
The
on and so forth.
expiration date of milk.
Yeah.
Poor old boys.
The price of physical prodigy. Few more years and you'll be another dead clone of the old man. Our raw materials are vintage, brother. Big Boss was in his late 50s when they created his copies. But I live on through this arm!
Then Liquid goes on to say, but I live on through this arm. And he's like, yeah, for fuck. And it is as mental as it seems. But this is, like, if you're going to do that.
Like, I got on board with Psycho Mantis,
Yeah.
you know, kind of the fantastical elements, but as soon as I saw that, I was like, I need to give this a bit of thought.
Yeah. Like, look, Harry Potter is absolutely daft and it is stupid. But there are people out there incredibly invested in that story because at least any time it pulls something daft and stupid, it commits itself to them. It doesn't backpedal on them in the next. It's like, actually, do you know what? It's not that there was a school for little
Wizards and witches and all that, yeah.
kids in
Little bastards.
in the English countryside who are wizards and witches respectively. You could have backpedaled on all of that and kind of said, no, Harry is actually just a victim of an abusive family life and he's invented this fantasy and none of that happened because of course none of it happened. That's the kind of thing that Kojima engages in, and that's why I think he's an arsehole. That's one of many reasons why I think he's an arsehole. But he's also, as much as it sickens me to say it, he's also a brilliant arsehole. An arsehole nonetheless.
A talented arsehole.
Yeah, that's
There's no
it.
denying the talent he's got.
Yeah, look, if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have my favourite thing ever.
He is a, what should you say, a double-edged sword,
Yeah,
as the saying goes.
we're getting very muddled now because there's so much to talk
Live
about.
on through this arm.
Yes,
Taking over the Metal Gear.
Liquid lives on through that arm and he decides we're
At
going to
that point when
hijack.
he rolls his sleeve up so you can see the complete, and you can see a small kind of surgical scar around it.
He starts up Metal Gear and wrecks the tanker with Metal Gear. The tanker's already sinking because he's detonated the C4 explosives. And you get this class sequence where Metal Gear is on top of the tanker, the now sinking tanker, and it's the dead of night, rain is pissing, all these soldiers are going crazy, Snake is scrambling trying to get out of the tanker on time.
I think initially they were going to put in a sequence where you escape.
You tried, yeah, that was one of the things that it
was deemed
decided.
not,
He just left it on the cutting room floor. It's actually in one of the trailers.
I think it's actually in the scene later in the game?
Yeah. And that kind of ties into the whole misinformation or disinformation, whatever the term is. But it ties into that whole
Otacon, we have a problem.
thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the tanker gets sunk. Ocelot escapes or Liquid Ocelot rather. Although it would seem that the consciousness of Ocelot has now taken back over control because you hear Ocelot inside the Metal Gear speaking to someone over the radio. He does actually reveal who it is. He's like, refers to the same man who he speaks to in the after credit sequence of the first game, Mr. President. So whoever this guy is, it's obviously the president. But as the game goes on,
We don't know that. It's left quite ambiguous.
Yeah, the president of the United States, George Sears. We'll get on to him.
Who will come into it later.
We'll get on to him when we get to him. Yeah, so that concludes the tanker section, and the game leads you to believe that Snake has died. Because the last you see of Snake is him floating down with the ship because he gets slapped off of a wall and...
Snake! Snake!
It is left ambiguous as to whether or not he got out of the tanker. That's when we open with the next section of the game where things start to get very surreal and very divisive. This is where the crux of most people's issue is with the game, and in a very large sense, it's fair enough. I and many people have since come to appreciate the brilliance behind the move, but even myself at the time, because like we mentioned earlier on, the second game was released in November of 2001.
22 years ago.
22 years ago, today no less.
Yeah.
Because of that, the cat was out of the bag as to the revelation that you now played through the majority of the game as a new character by the name of Raiden. Nobody wanted this from a sequel, and this was kind of Kojima's plan. It was like, okay, I'm going to lead you all down this garden path thinking that you're going to play the entirety of this game as Solid Snake. I have released a demo to the world. I have released numerous trailers that give everyone this impression. And then there's this bait and switch where after the tanker section, we have a time jump forward of 2 years later, and we're told that where the tanker sank, that there has now been a
massive oil spill.
Yeah, there was a massive oil spill as a result of that tanker sinking, and there has been this facility that has been built to clean up said oil, and that is where the next section of the game takes place, is in this facility known as the Big Shell. So you're sent in, and even the game at this point is still trying to gaslight you into believing that you're still playing a snake. You hear the voice of Colonel Campbell Paul Eiding, who was your commanding officer from the first game. You hear him giving a mission briefing to a character he's referring to as Snake. So at this point, it's just the game trying to gaslight you into believing that, okay, this is 2 years later and I'm still playing a snake. And even the character of Raiden, who was voiced by
Quentin Flynn.
Quentin Flynn, yes.
Yep.
Another fairly well-known name in the realm of anime and video games voice acting. He is even speaking in a gruffer tone than what he normally speaks to try and lend into the illusion that you're still playing a snake.
Snake, do you remember the sinking of that tanker 2 years ago?
Of course.
Terrorists blow a hole in an oil tanker full of crude barely 20 miles off the shore of Manhattan. Your classic nightmare.
Although one glance at this guy, you see he's wearing like a black sneaking suit.
If this was their attempt to hide him all the way up to that point, it was not done well.
Yeah, well, they're trying to, they're leaving you in some kind of disbelief. You're like, surely not. What's going on here? You see he's got long blondie locks and they're sticking out the back of the helmet that he's still wearing.
That's the word, androgynous.
Yeah, so we haven't gotten a face reveal yet, but you're kind of going, hang on now, this isn't Snake, but the Colonel is referring to him as Snake.
This is Snake. I'm now inside strut A of Shell 1.
But you're being given the exposition by the Colonel anyway about the whole, okay, look, the tanker went down here 2 years ago and this facility was set up to clean up the oil that spilled as a result of that tanker going down. But since the facility has been hijacked by terrorists, there was a tour going on, and the now President of the United States was touring this facility when it was attacked by terrorists who have now taken the president hostage. The leader of the terrorists is Solid Snake. And you're like, what?
The hero of Shadow Moses? The very same.
It's around that brief intro the Colonel tells you, okay, oh, and by the way, Snake, we're changing your codename for all further communications. You are now designated Raiden. So now the cat is out of the bag. And during your first infiltration of the bottom part of the Big Shell facility, after you get past a handful of guards, you go up an elevator, and as you're going up the elevator, it's when the Colonel drops the bombshell about the leader of the terrorists being Solid Snake. Raiden removes his helmet and he reveals himself. So you're now left under no illusion whatsoever that you are not playing as Solid Snake, but you are now playing as this character who Ben a moment ago described as being fairly androgynous.
Yeah.
It
makes me confused, and I don't like that.
I don't know would I go as far as to call Raiden androgynous, but he's definitely not manly in the sense that Snake is. Snake is the grizzled, gruff.
That was part of the, the motivation behind that. Apparently Kojima heard the females working on the game that they couldn't really relate to Snake because he was gruff and manly. So he wanted to make a protagonist they could find appealing.
Yeah, I remember.
Now, there's many reasons why he made Raiden, but apparently that was one of them.
With the original release of Metal Gear Solid 2, what came with the game was a DVD of bonus features. Now, this was packaged with the game in Europe, because as I said, there was a delay on the release. We didn't get it until the 8th of March 2002, whereas they got the game in November 2001 in the States. So I actually knew that all of this was going to happen, because like I said, I was buying all the magazines leading up to the release of Metal Gear, and I got it from one of the magazines, so I knew this was happening before I played the game.
You spoiled it for yourself.
I didn't mean to, because I didn't know this twist was coming.
Oh.
Well,
like I said earlier, now I will actually give credit where it's due. They really hit it very well.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you could never get away with it. There's always leaks and people spilling it out and all that. So the fact that he managed to hide it as well as he did all the way up to release, fair play.
I had heard that part of his motivation for doing what he did was, remember, like we said, he's a cinemaphile, and in...
He's a whatophile?
Yes. Like, he wanted to try and do a Terminator 2 on it, where in the first one, Arnie was the bad guy, and they released a second one.
Yeah.
And then you had a bait and switch where, he's not the bad guy now, he's actually the good guy. And he wanted to do something similar to that. Although at the time it wasn't received very well because Snake was beloved after the first game.
I saw the reception initially for Raiden. He was absolutely slated.
He was.
Now look, I can understand well enough a lot of people were expecting to continue to play as the protagonist from the previous game and from the previous chapter of the second game.
Yeah, so Kojima had his whole thing, which you could take as being fairly pretentious, and I would have a hard time arguing with it. I think it worked for what the entire game achieves.
He plays an important role in the plot.
I actually like the character of Raiden. I
do too.
I think he's a very good character.
I came in the series long after, than anyone else, and he didn't bother me.
The main problem that people had with Raiden, and I'm not saying it's the only problem, but it's definitely the main problem, is that he is not Snake. Snake is the coolest character in a video game, bar none. Now all of a sudden you're being told you're playing as someone else. And I guess it was salt in the wound that this character was a little bit more feminine, a bit more of a kind of a pretty boy.
Apparently that is, I think, a standard of beauty for Japanese people.
I'm not sure exactly, because like the DVD that I mentioned earlier on that came with the original release of Metal Gear Solid 2, it does have little bits with Yaji Shinkawa, the lead artist. He's saying like, oh yeah, Kojima came to me and he said, I want this character to be like an extremely beautiful man. There is a weird kind of a fixation with these kind of feminine, I think the term is femboys in like Japanese culture. You see it in stuff like Berserk, where you've got the character of Griffith, who's a very feminine looking man.
That's a man.
Yeah, well.
Oh no.
There you go. And so there is a kind of a thing in Japanese culture where they do seem to have some kind of a fixation on femboys for whatever reason, but I think Raiden does qualify as being a bit of a femboy, I think, because even his voice is that bit higher pitched. Where Snake had a roll, when you could just dive forward into a roll, Raiden had a cartwheel, which is a kind of a bit more of a flamboyant kind of a movement, I suppose.
More flexibility.
Very early in the game, anyways, you get contacted by the Colonel, and you're getting your exposition from the Colonel as to what's going on. But then you are joined by the new mission analyst, Rose, who is also Raiden's girlfriend. And again, Kojima being the cinemaphile that he is,
Jack and Rose.
Raiden's actual name is Jack and his girlfriend's name is Rose. So Jack and Rose, Titanic. There you go. Another little nod and a wink to cinema.
Apparently a lot of their codex calls together was apparently relation or parallel to his own relationship with his wife.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise
that.
me because, I think pretty much everything Kojima does, there's a bit of himself inserted into it.
Well, there is literally himself inserted into it.
Yes, very, very literally himself.
Literally.
Yeah, he's not in any way tactful about it, so that doesn't come as any surprise.
Is it subtle? No, you don't understand. He literally shows up in his own game.
It's about as subtle as a shovel to the face.
There's a nice image for you.
In any case, a lot of people didn't like the whole Raiden and Rose interaction.
I might be on that kind of side.
Yeah, again,
I know it's going to give a bit more depth to his character and such, but I don't know, a lot of it was just like, oh god, come on, get over this. And
I think where it goes, I think there's a payoff towards the latter half of the game.
It serves a purpose, yeah.
Yeah, there's a great payoff. Say, at the start, you're almost kind of like a fish out of water with regards to these new characters. You're like, who the fuck is this guy? Where is Snake? Why am I talking to his stupid girlfriend? I don't care. Where's Snake? And that's all you want. This is all part of Kojima's whole thing of like, well, I made you expect more of the same, and now you're getting this thing that you didn't want at all, which is very debatable. Is this clever, or is it just one man's hubris, just gaslighting?
I would say it's a
gaslighting, paying customers. Give the people what they want, basically. This is the whole our games art thing. Like, if games are art, well, then this is totally permissible. This is... it's actually very hard to decide what side of the fence to fall on this one, because, on one hand, it's like, well, you had expectations. You had certain things that you wanted. We made you believe you were going to get them, and we gave you something else. That will get you thinking, and that will get you questioning things. But is it a fair practice by Kojima to have done that? If he was honest in his marketing as to what this game was going to be, that would be one thing. He actually went out of his way to like edit the trailers in such a way to make you believe that you were getting a full game played as Snake. When you look at the box art of Metal Gear Solid 2, Snake is the character on the box. There is no mention of Raiden. The clips that you see on the back of the box, the little screenshots from the game, they're all from the tanker sequence.
It's been kind of drawn back now to any gameplay showed of Big Shell at the time. He swapped out Raiden's character model with Snake. I suppose you could look at it any which way. It could be an instance of like a point he makes on later in the game about misinformation and so forth.
Yeah.
Or you could look at it as if he's just an arse hat, just looking to annoy people.
I think both things are true. He is an arse hat.
I think, well, yeah.
And because he pushed the boat out so very far, he actually got a hard slap insofar as the fan response to it was, because like from critics the game was received very well, but the customer I don't think was very happy as a result of what they pulled with the bait and switch of Raiden and Snake.
Oh, they slated him. Got really bad negative reception. Like
retroactively, it's since seen as being so far ahead of its time and groundbreaking in lots of different ways, be it the predictions it made about the future and about technology and misinformation and fake news, so on and so forth. Like I said, Metal Gear Solid 2 ends the debate forevermore. Are video games art?
If it can get you thinking 22 years after its release, you tell me.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, love it or hate it, nothing like this had been done in a video game ever before or since. I personally love them, and I think where they go with them, like they're such meaty class ideas that come about as a result of said bait and switch. This game and the first game are kind of neck and neck for me, with which is my favourite one. Like 3 is a fantastic game, but 3 was a course correction because this game wasn't received well by the customer. I would hazard a guess that Konami turned around to Kojima and they were like, yeah, look, you're fucking artsy-fartsy bullshit. You may knock it on the head now. Give the customer what they want, because at the end of the day, all we care about is selling copies of games. And if you're going to keep on subverting expectations to make some kind of artistic wanky points about stuff we don't care about, you're going to bankrupt us, and fuck you for that, buddy. So 3 is a definite course correction. 3 is more akin to Metal Gear Solid 1.
I would say a Metal Gear Solid 1 might be objectively the best, but 3 is my personal favourite because that's the one I first played.
Depends on what perspective you're coming at. Is it a better game? Is it a better story?
I just found it more fun. Characters, the bosses. I don't know, I just got really into it. It set everything up for me. It got me into the world of Metal Gear, and it set the tone.
Yeah, it depends what metric you prioritise. Do you care more about storytelling? Do you care more about gameplay? Do you care more about... I don't know, the music? Do you care more about the setting?
Snake Eater, boy. Can't beat that.
Do you care more about, I don't know, the art direction or whatever?
It's all personal preference.
So many different metrics that you could evaluate and decide on the back of what game is your favourite or which one is your least favourite, so on and so forth. 2, I find it's just so cerebral, so surreal, so meta.
It is a bit of a mindfuck.
Oh, it's scary.
My God.
It is a scary game. Towards the end of it. Like,
how old are you now when you played this?
I was 13 years old.
13-year-old. So when the Colonel started acting up a bit, you must have been shitting it.
Yeah, because what I did, because like I said, this game, I had anticipated it so much and I had played so much of the demo. Like, I was proficient at the game the second I got it because I had played all the new mechanics from the demo into the ground. So I actually stayed up all night, well into the long hours of the morning, and I finished the game in one fucking run. So here was me, an exhausted teenager, letting on to be sick from school.
Oh yes, lest we forget.
Delirious from the lack of sleep in the long hours of the morning, having played through the entire game, and I came to like the really cerebral bit. And again, this is kind of, we have to save this for the latter parts of this series of podcasts about 2.
Yeah.
The stuff that happens towards the end of it, just the fourth wall breaking that the game engages in, the tone, the ideas.
Music, the score that they use really kind of sets it.
Yeah.
God.
I mentioned the horror elements of the first game last time around, but this game has a lot of psychological horror in it. There's no, jump scares or anything like that. There's nothing cheap like that, but it gets inside your head. The game starts to acknowledge that it's a game and starts to make you and the character question reality and what the fuck is going on. And this is all complemented by this incredibly eerie music and characters acting very strange, and then these characters that basically show their hand as to what their motive is and what's going on, and the ideas are so unbelievably complex, and to a 13-year-old mind at the time, speaking from my own experience, it was just terrifying. And I remember after completing the game, after all that transpires towards the end of it, I was unable to sleep. I got off of school that day from faking being sick, but I was actually sick the next day, not physically, but psychologically, and I hadn't slept a wink because the game rattled the bejesus out of me. Like, all I wanted was another Metal Gear Solid 1 with nicer graphics. That's all I wanted. But what I got was...
I'm scared for life.
Yeah, what I got was a fucking existential crisis.
At the age of 13.
Yeah, and I've been getting them since.
This is where it all started. This is your therapy session.
Yeah, maybe this game has a lot to answer for. I have no doubt that this game is responsible for setting me down a course of thinking very deeply about things, and maybe I would have been better off had I never gone down that road. With all that said, this game, a total mindfuck. But retroactively, when all the dust settled, I came away from the whole kind of thing like, I played through the game so many times as a young fella because I was desperate to understand it and come to some kind of a conclusion as to whether or not I liked it. I don't think it was until many years went by. I was definitely obsessed with it, but I couldn't get my head around what do I fucking think of it like.
It's really interesting.
When the dust settled at the end, I'm like, yeah, look, I don't think anything made me think as much as that game ever did. So this is all stuff that we're going to get into in the next couple of
that is going to
parts
fry
of this.
my brain when we do.
Yeah.
Oh God, there's a lot to unravel.
So the next one we'll probably get into characters and all that kind of stuff, and there'll probably be a third part as well. We'll get into characters, premise. Yeah, I don't know what.
All the meat of the sandwich, boy.
That's it. We'll kind of get into the nitty gritty. We've kind of covered the tanker. We've covered the build up to the release of the game.
It's going to be plenty of video elements as well that kind of accompany them. Now for listener.
That's an alright attempt, I suppose, at just opening the door into Metal Gear Solid 2. There'll probably be like at least another one, but probably two more parts to this, I suspect. So if you can endure this rambling nonsense about a 22-year-old game, we'll see you in the next one.
This is PJ and Ben signing off now.
Signing off.
Thank you.
Good night.
Goodbye.
And God bless.
You.
There's room for only one snake and one big boss.
Looks like you were long overdue for retirement.